The sharp crack of Deirdre Norton's father's hand across her cheek echoed through their modest home on the outskirts of Whispering Creek, Arizona Territory, 1878. The sting lingered as tears welled in her eyes, not from the pain but from the cold hatred in her father's gaze. "No daughter of mine consorts with an Apache," he spat, his weathered face flushed with rage beneath his graying temples. "You bring shame to this family, to this town." Deirdre straightened her back, tasting blood where her lip had split. At 22, she was no longer a child to be commanded, though in Whispering Creek, a woman's independence came at steep costs. "Little Hawk saved my life when my horse threw me in the canyon," she replied, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "He showed me kindness when I was hurt and alone. That doesn't make him my enemy." Her father's laugh was brittle. "Kindness? Is that what you call it? The whole town's talking about how Jeremiah saw you two by Eagle Creek, and it wasn't just conversation you were sharing." Heat rose to Deirdre's cheeks. "Little Hawk is a healer among his people. He was teaching me about medicinal plants, nothing more." "You expect me to believe that?" Her father grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her flesh. "Your mother died bringing you into this world, and this is how you repay her sacrifice. By disgracing her memory." Deirdre pulled away. "I've done nothing wrong." "You'll not see that savage again," he commanded. "I've arranged for you to marry Harold Jenkins. He's willing to overlook your indiscretion. The wedding will be next month." "Harold Jenkins is 53 years old and has buried 3 wives already," Deirdre protested, horror washing through her. "He's respectable and he'll keep you in line," her father retorted. "Now get to your room. You're not to leave this house except for church, until I say otherwise." Deirdre retreated to her small bedroom, the walls closing in around her. Through the window, she could see the distant mountains where Little Hawk's people made their home. They had shared nothing but conversation and knowledge, but in Whispering Creek, even that was forbidden. She had grown to care for him. Yes, his gentle wisdom and quiet strength had touched something in her heart, but she had never acted on those feelings. Now, the whispers had spread like wildfire, and the truth no longer mattered. She was branded, her reputation in tatters. As night fell, Deirdre made her decision. Packing a small bag with her most essential belongings, she slipped out the window once her father's snores rumbled through the house. She couldn't stay and be forced to marry a man who had worked 3 wives into early graves. She couldn't betray the feelings in her heart, even if they could never be realized. The night was cool as she made her way to the livery stable. Old Pete, the stable hand who had always had a soft spot for her, was dozing in the corner. "Pete," she whispered, gently shaking his shoulder. He startled awake, blinking at her in confusion. "Miss Deirdre, what are you doing here at this hour?" "I need my mare, Pete. I'm leaving." Concern furrowed his weathered brow. "Leaving? Where to, child?" "San Bernardino," she said, naming the first place that came to mind, a growing town in California she'd heard travelers speak of. "I have a cousin there." The lie came easily in her desperation. Pete studied her face, noting the bruise beginning to form. His eyes softened with understanding. "Your father's a hard man," he said simply. "Wait here." He disappeared into the shadows of the stable, returning moments later with her chestnut mare, saddled and ready. "Take this," he said, pressing a small pouch into her hand. "It ain't much, but it'll get you started." Deirdre's eyes filled with tears. "I can't take your money, Pete." "You can and you will," he insisted. "My Lizzie would have wanted me to help you. She always said you had a good heart, no matter what folks whispered." She embraced him, this kind old man who was showing more fatherly care than her own blood ever had. "Thank you," she whispered. "Follow the western trail out of town," Pete instructed. "When you reach the fork at dawn, take the northern path. It'll lead you to the railroad in 3 days' time, the Southern Path." His voice trailed off. "What about the Southern Path?" Deirdre asked. Pete shook his head. "Apache territory. Despite what you might feel about Little Hawk, his tribe ain't all friendly to white folks passing through alone." Deirdre nodded, though a part of her wondered if finding Little Hawk to say goodbye might not be the wiser course. She mounted her mare, feeling the night breeze against her face. "God go with you, child," Pete said, stepping back. "And with you," she replied, then urged her horse forward into the darkness. Dawn broke over the eastern horizon as Deirdre reached the fork Pete had described. Her body ached from riding through the night, and her mare needed rest. The northern path stretched before her, a thread of pale dirt winding through scrubland toward the distant promise of civilization, and the railroad that could carry her to California. The southern path disappeared into rugged terrain, the domain of the people who had been here long before settlers like her father arrived with their cattle and claims of ownership. As she hesitated at the crossroads, the sound of approaching hoofbeats reached her ears. Fear clutched at her heart had her father discovered her missing so soon and sent men after her. She urged her mare off the trail and into a stand of cottonwoods, heart pounding as she watched the rider approach. It wasn't her father or anyone from town, but a stranger tall and lean in the saddle, with a worn leather duster and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his face. A rifle was secured to his saddle, and a revolver hung at his hip. The man reined in his horse at the fork, scanning the surrounding landscape with a deliberate gaze that suggested he was tracking something or someone. When his eyes settled on her hiding place, Deirdre knew concealment was futile. "I see you there in the trees, miss," he called, his voice carrying a hint of the South. "Best come out slow and easy. I mean you no harm." Deirdre hesitated, then nudged her mare forward. If he meant to rob or assault her, hiding would only delay the inevitable. Better to face whatever came with dignity. "Are you following me?" she asked, keeping a cautious distance. The stranger pushed back his hat, revealing a face tanned by sun and weathered by wind, with eyes the color of a summer storm. He wasn't young, perhaps 30 or so, but he carried himself with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to hard country and harder choices. "No, madam," he replied, "though I reckon someone might be before long. A young woman riding alone at dawn tends to raise questions." "My business is my own," Deirdre said, lifting her chin. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "So it is. Name's Samuel Ackerman. Most folks call me Sam." Deirdre hesitated before responding. "Deirdre Norton." "Where you headed, Miss Norton?" "San Bernardino," she said, then added defiantly, "California." Sam nodded, studying her with those storm-gray eyes. "Long way to travel alone." "I can manage." He glanced at the fork in the road, then back at her. "You taking the northern route?" "Yes." "Wise choice," he commented. Southern Path's been seeing Apache raiding parties lately. They've been hitting freight wagons and lone travelers. Deirdre's heart skipped. The Apache aren't all hostile. Some are peaceful. Sam's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's so. You seem mighty informed for a young lady from town." She flushed. "I raid," she said curtly. "Reading's one thing, experience is another." He shifted in his saddle, his gaze drifting to the horizon. "I'm headed to San Bernardino myself. Escorting you would cause me no inconvenience." Suspicion flared in Deirdre. "Why would you offer that?" "You don't know me." "Let's just say I've seen what happens to lone travelers in these parts," he replied, something dark passing behind his eyes. "Besides, a man traveling with a woman draws less attention than a woman alone. Or perhaps you're hoping for some reward," Deirdre suggested coldly. Sam chuckled, a sound without much humor. "If I wanted your valuables, Miss Norton, I'd have taken them already, and if I had other intentions." He left the implication hanging. Deirdre studied him, weighing her limited options. Pete's money wouldn't last long, and the journey to San Bernardino would take weeks. A lone woman was vulnerable, not just to bandits and hostile tribes, but to the judgment and exploitation of respectable society. "Very well, Mr. Ackerman," she said finally. "But understand that I can use this." She pulled aside her cloak to reveal the small pistol tucked in her belt, a gift from her father years ago, when he'd still harbored affection for his only child. Sam nodded, something like respect flickering in his eyes. "Good. You'll need that spirit where we're going." He gestured toward the northern path. "Shall we? There's a creek about 5 miles ahead where we can rest the horses." As they rode, Deirdre maintained a cautious distance, watching Sam from the corner of her eye. He rode with the easy posture of a man born to the saddle, but there was a vigilance in the way he continuously scanned their surroundings. "You running from something, Miss Norton?" he asked after a while, breaking the silence. Deirdre stiffened. "What makes you ask that?" "Most young ladies don't leave town at midnight with just a saddlebag and a pistol," he observed. "And that bruise on your cheek tells its own story." She touched her face self-consciously. "Perhaps I'm seeking something, not running from it. And what might that be?" Deirdre considered her answer carefully. "Freedom to make my own choices." Sam nodded slowly. "Noble aim, rare in these parts for a woman." "What about you, Mr. Ackerman? What brings you to this territory?" A shadow crossed his face. "Work," he said simply. "What kind of work?" "The kind that pays." He offered no further explanation, and Deirdre didn't press. Everyone had secrets, and she was in no position to demand his. They reached the creek Sam had mentioned, a ribbon of clear water cutting through the parched landscape. As they dismounted to let the horses drink, Deirdre felt the full weight of her exhaustion. She hadn't slept since before her confrontation with her father, and her body ached from the long night's ride. "Rest," Sam said, noting her fatigue. "I'll keep watch." Despite her wariness, Deirdre found herself drifting off against the trunk of a cottonwood, lulled by the burbling of the creek and the gentle nickering of the horses. When she woke, the sun had climbed high overhead and Sam was crouched by a small fire, cooking something that made her stomach growl. "Hope you like rabbit," he said, offering her a tin plate. Deirdre accepted gratefully, realizing she hadn't eaten in nearly a day. "Thank you." As they ate, she studied him more closely. His clothes were worn but well maintained, and the revolver at his hip was a fine Colt, its grip smooth from years of use. He wore no wedding ring, but there was a small silver medallion hanging from a leather cord around his neck. "St. Michael," he explained, catching her gaze, "patron saint of soldiers and protectors." "Were you a soldier?" A humorless smile. "Once, during the war, Confederate or Union. Does it matter now?" he countered, then sighed. "Union, though I had family who chose differently." They fell into silence again, finishing their meal as the day's heat intensified. After packing up their minimal camp, they continued northward, the landscape gradually changing from scrubland to more rugged terrain. By late afternoon, they had reached a high ridge overlooking a vast valley. In the distance, a plume of dust signaled riders approaching from the direction of Whispering Creek. Sam spotted it first, pointing wordlessly. Deirdre felt her blood run cold. "Could be anyone," Sam said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "It's my father," Deirdre replied with certainty. "He must have discovered I'm gone and gathered men to search." Sam studied the dust cloud. "4 riders moving fast. We can outrun them if we head into those hills." He pointed to a rocky outcropping to the west. "Ground's too hard there for easy tracking." Deirdre hesitated. "The northern path is the first place they'll look," Sam finished. "They'll expect you to head for the railroad. Then we go west," Deirdre asked, her heart racing. Sam's gaze shifted to the south. No, south. Into Apache territory. Deirdre stared at him in disbelief. Your father's men won't follow us there, Sam said. And contrary to what people say, the Apache don't kill everyone they encounter. They respect strength and honesty. How do you know so much about them? Deirdre demanded. Something like pain flickered across Sam's face. Experience, he said simply. Now we need to move. Those riders will reach this ridge within the hour. Deirdre hesitated only a moment before making her decision. South, then. They urged their horses down the ridge and across the valley floor, staying close to patches of mesquite and chaparral for cover. The sun beat down mercilessly as they rode, and Deirdre found herself wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake in trusting this stranger. As dusk approached, they reached a narrow canyon that cut deep into the red earth. Sam led them into its shadows, following what appeared to be a game trail until they reached a small grotto where a spring bubbled from the rock face. We'll camp here, he said, dismounting. Your father's men won't find this place and we're sheltered from view. And the Apache? Deirdre asked, scanning the canyon walls nervously. If they find us, we'll parley, Sam replied, unpacking his bedroll. I speak enough of their language to explain ourselves. Deirdre's eyebrows rose. You're full of surprises, Mr. Ackerman. Necessity teaches many skills. He began gathering wood for a small fire. You should rest. Tomorrow will be challenging. As night fell, they sat beside the modest fire, eating dried beef and hardtack from Sam's provisions. The canyon walls rose around them like protective hands, and overhead, stars appeared one by one in the deepening blue. Why are you really helping me? Deirdre asked suddenly. Sam was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. When he did, his voice was quiet, almost lost beneath the crackling of the fire. 5 years ago, my sister fled her husband in Tennessee. He was a respected businessman, a deacon in the church. He also beat her regularly. Sam's eyes reflected the firelight, distant with memory. She tried to reach me in Arizona, never made it. Some good Samaritan recognized her from the posters her husband distributed and returned her to him. His jaw tightened. She died 3 months later, an accident they called it. Deirdre's throat constricted. I'm sorry. Since then, I've made it a point to help those who need to escape, Sam continued. Especially women fleeing men who claim to love them while showing only cruelty. My father doesn't claim to love me, Deirdre said softly. He blames me for my mother's death in childbirth. But that's not why I left. Why then? She hesitated, wondering how much to reveal. The town has turned against me because they believe I've formed an attachment to someone they consider unsuitable. The Apache you mentioned earlier, Sam guessed, surprising her. The one who isn't hostile. Deirdre nodded slowly. His name is Little Hawk. He's a healer. He saved my life when I was injured in the backcountry, taught me about medicinal plants. We became friends. She swallowed hard. Nothing improper happened, but in Whispering Creek, even speaking to an Apache is considered a grave sin. And your father's solution was to marry you off to Harold Jenkins, a man 30 years my senior who's already buried 3 wives, Deirdre confirmed bitterly. I couldn't face that fate. Sam studied her across the fire. You care for him, this Little Hawk. It doesn't matter, Deirdre said, looking away. Our worlds are too different. I just couldn't stay and be punished for a crime I didn't commit. Sometimes caring is enough of a crime for those who fear what they don't understand, Sam observed. He stood, stretching. Get some sleep. I'll take first watch. Deirdre settled into her bedroll, watching as Sam positioned himself at the mouth of the grotto, his rifle across his knees. Despite the danger of their situation, she felt safer than she had in years. Dawn came with a whisper of wind through the canyon and the distant cry of a hawk. Deirdre woke to find Sam already alert, brewing coffee over a carefully banked fire. "Your father's men passed by the canyon entrance just after midnight," he informed her, handing her a tin cup. "They're heading north toward the railroad. They didn't spot our trail." Relief washed through her. "Then we're safe, for now," Sam cautioned. "But we're deep in Apache territory now. We need to move carefully." They broke camp efficiently, leaving minimal trace of their presence. As they rode deeper into the canyon, the walls rose higher around them, streaked with red and ochre. Vegetation grew sparse except for stubborn scrub brush and the occasional stunted pine clinging to crevices in the rock. "The Apache believe these canyons are sacred," Sam commented as they navigated a particularly narrow passage. "They say the spirits of their ancestors dwell in these stones." "How do you know so much about them?" Deirdre asked again. Sam was quiet for a moment. "After the war, I wanted nothing to do with civilization. Spent 2 years living on the fringes of Apache territory, trapping and hunting. A band led by a chief named Tall Bear found me half dead from fever in a winter storm. They could have killed me or left me to die. Instead, they took me in, healed me." He touched the medallion at his neck. "They called me Ghost Eyes because of the color, said it meant I could see between worlds." "What happened?" Deirdre asked softly. "I lived with them until soldiers from Fort Bowie attacked their camp, thinking they were a war party," Sam replied, his voice tight. "I tried to stop it, explained they were peaceful. No one listened. 12 died, including Tall Bear's wife and youngest son." "I'm sorry," Deirdre said, understanding now the pain she'd glimpsed in his eyes. "The world isn't kind to those who cross the boundaries others have set," Sam said, glancing at her. "I suspect you're learning that lesson now." By midday, they had emerged from the canyon into a broad valley cradled between mountain ranges. A river snaked through its center, bordered by cottonwoods and willows that provided welcome shade from the relentless sun. "We'll follow the river south," Sam decided. "There's a trading post 3 days' ride from here where we can resupply, before heading west to California." As they rode, Deirdre found herself drawn into conversation with Sam in a way she hadn't expected. He spoke of his travels throughout the territory, of the changing landscape and the people who inhabited it. He had a way of describing the world that made her see beauty in its harshness, and his knowledge of plants and animals rivaled even Little Hawk's. In turn, she told him about growing up in Whispering Creek, about her love of books and her secret dream of becoming a healer. She had always been fascinated by medicine, collecting knowledge from the town doctor, from traveling peddlers with their tinctures and remedies, and most recently, from Little Hawk. "You have healing hands," Sam observed as she dressed a scratch he'd received from a thorny branch. "Gentle but firm." "That's rare." Deirdre felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. Little Hawk said something similar. He believed women make better healers because they understand both strength and tenderness. "Wise man," Sam commented. "Is he the reason you're heading to San Bernardino, to leave him behind?" Deirdre tied off the bandage, avoiding Sam's gaze. "Little Hawk has his people, his responsibilities, and I need to find my own path. San Bernardino is growing. They might need someone with knowledge of medicine." Sam nodded, saying nothing more, but Deirdre sensed he understood more than she was willing to admit, even to herself. As evening approached, they made camp by the river, the murmur of water a soothing counterpoint to the calling of night birds. Sam caught fish for their dinner, and Deirdre gathered wild onions and greens to accompany them. They ate in companionable silence, watching as stars appeared overhead. The night was warm, the air fragrant with sage and river water. "Tell me more about Little Hawk," Sam said suddenly, surprising her. Deirdre hesitated. "Why do you want to know?" "Because he matters to you," Sam replied simply. "And because understanding often begins with listening." She studied him across the fire, this enigmatic man who had become her protector and perhaps her friend. "He's the son of a medicine man," she began slowly. "He was raised to follow in his father's footsteps, but he also spent time at a mission school as a child. He speaks English better than most of his tribe, and he knows more about the white man's world, making him a bridge between worlds," Sam noted. "Not an easy position." "No," Deirdre agreed. "His people sometimes question his loyalty because of his understanding of our ways, and white people distrust him because he remains true to his heritage." She smiled softly at a memory. "He told me once that wisdom doesn't belong to any one people, that truth is like water, flowing wherever there is an opening to receive it." "He sounds like a remarkable man," Sam said quietly. "He is," Deirdre replied, her voice catching. "That's why I had to leave. The rumors in town. They were putting him in danger. My father threatened to contact the cavalry at Fort Bowie, claimed that Little Hawk had—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Taken advantage of you," Sam supplied grimly. Deirdre nodded. "I couldn't let that happen. Little Hawk's people have suffered enough at the hands of the army." "So you sacrificed your happiness for his safety," Sam observed. "That takes courage." "It wasn't courage," Deirdre insisted. "It was necessity." "Often the same thing," Sam replied, stoking the fire. "Get some rest. I'll wake you for the second watch." Later, as Deirdre kept vigilant beneath the vast canopy of stars, she found herself wondering about the path her life had taken. A week ago, she had been a respected young woman in Whispering Creek, her future predictable if constrained. Now she was a fugitive, fleeing into unknown territory with a man she barely knew, leaving behind another man who had touched her heart in ways she hadn't thought possible. Yet despite the danger and uncertainty, she felt strangely free. The vast landscape around her seemed to breathe possibility, as if the very air was different outside the stifling confines of town and its judgments. She glanced at Sam's sleeping form, noting the way one hand remained near his revolver even in slumber. He was a contradiction, hard yet gentle, reserved yet forthcoming. She had never met anyone quite like him. The following morning dawned clear and hot. They set out early, following the river's winding course through the valley. By midday, the terrain had become increasingly rugged, with rocky outcroppings and steep inclines that slowed their progress. "We need to be vigilant," Sam cautioned as they paused to rest the horses in a grove of cottonwoods. "This is a natural ambush point." No sooner had the words left his mouth than a sharp whistle cut the air, followed by the distinctive sound of a rifle being cocked. Sam went very still, his hand moving slowly away from his weapon. "Don't move," he murmured to Deirdre, then called out in a language she didn't understand, guttural yet flowing, with sharp consonants and elongated vowels. Silence followed, then a response from the rocks above. Sam replied, his tone respectful but firm. After several tense exchanges, 3 Apache warriors emerged from hiding places Deirdre would never have spotted. They approached cautiously, rifles trained on the travelers. The leader, a tall man with a face like weathered stone, addressed Sam directly. Though Deirdre couldn't understand the words, the suspicion in his tone was unmistakable. Sam responded calmly, occasionally gesturing toward Deirdre. She kept her posture relaxed despite her racing heart, remembering Little Hawk's advice that showing fear often provoked aggression. The conversation continued for several minutes. At one point, Sam removed his hat and pushed back his hair, revealing a thin scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. The Apache leader's eyes widened slightly, and his stance shifted from hostile to wary. Finally, Sam turned to Deirdre. "This is Broken Shield, war chief of the Eagle Band," he explained. "They're patrolling their hunting grounds and spotted us approaching." "What did you tell them?" Deirdre asked, her mouth dry. "The truth that you're fleeing injustice and I'm helping you reach California." Sam's expression was carefully neutral. "I also mentioned that you're a friend of a healer named Little Hawk." Deirdre's heart skipped. "You told them that? It may save our lives," Sam replied. "Broken Shield knows of Little Hawk, though they are from different bands. He's going to take us to their camp for the night. Their chief will decide whether to let us continue our journey." "And if he decides against us?" Deirdre asked quietly. Sam met her gaze steadily. "Then we'll face that when it comes. For now, follow my lead and show respect." They were escorted through winding ravines and over rocky passes until they reached a well-hidden camp nestled in a protected valley. Women paused in their work to watch the strangers' arrival, while children scampered behind their mothers, peering out with curious eyes. Warriors stood alert throughout the camp, their expressions guarded. At the center of the encampment, an elderly man sat before a large hide-covered dwelling. His face was deeply lined, his hair streaked with gray, but his eyes were sharp and piercing beneath heavy brows. Broken Shield approached the elder, speaking rapidly. The old man listened, his gaze never leaving the newcomers. "That's Stone Talker, their chief," Sam murmured. "Show respect but not fear." Deirdre straightened her shoulders as the chief beckoned them forward. Sam approached first, speaking in the Apache tongue. When he mentioned Little Hawk's name, the chief's expression changed subtly, interest kindling in his deep-set eyes. To Deirdre's surprise, the chief responded in halting English. "You know, son of Medicine Man." Gathering her courage, Deirdre stepped forward. "Yes, Little Hawk saved my life when I was injured. He taught me about healing plants." Stone Talker studied her intently. "White women not often friends to Apache." "Little Hawk showed me kindness when others from my town would have left me to die," Deirdre replied. "I respect him and his knowledge." The chief turned to Sam. "And you, Ghost Eyes, many winters since you walk with people." "The world changes, but respect remains," Sam answered. "We seek safe passage through your lands, nothing more." Stone Talker considered this, then gestured to a nearby woman. "You stay, eat, sleep. Tomorrow we decide." As the woman led them to a small dwelling at the edge of the camp, Sam exhaled slowly. "That went better than I expected." "He called you Ghost Eyes," Deirdre noted. "Like you said before, news travels between bands," Sam explained. "My time with Tall Bear's people is known to many Apache groups." "Is that good or bad for us?" "Depends on what else they've heard," Sam replied grimly. They were given food, a stew of rabbit and wild roots, and left to rest in the small shelter. As night fell, the sounds of the camp enveloped them, women talking, children laughing, the rhythmic pounding of a drum from somewhere nearby. "What happens now?" Deirdre asked, keeping her voice low. Sam leaned against the entrance of the shelter, watching the activity outside. "They'll discuss our fate. If they decide we're trustworthy, they'll let us continue. If not..." He left the implication hanging. "Will they kill us?" Deirdre asked bluntly. "Unlikely. More probably they'd take our horses and supplies and escort us back to the edge of their territory." He glanced at her. "Either way, we'll know by morning." Dawn came with a commotion outside their shelter. Sam was instantly alert, his hand moving to his side before remembering his weapons had been taken upon their arrival. Broken Shield appeared at the entrance, his expression unreadable. He spoke to Sam in rapid Apache, then gestured for them to follow. "What is it?" Deirdre asked anxiously. "Riders approaching from the north," Sam translated. "White men. Stone Talker wants us to see." They followed Broken Shield to a high point overlooking the approach to the valley. In the distance, a group of riders was visible, moving steadily through the landscape. Sam borrowed a spyglass from one of the warriors and studied the approaching group. His expression darkened. "Your father is among them, and those are cavalry uniformed soldiers from Fort Bowie." Deirdre's blood ran cold. "How did they find us?" "They're following our trail," Sam replied grimly. "And they've brought trackers." He handed the spyglass back to the warrior and turned to Broken Shield, speaking urgently in Apache. The war chief listened, his face impassive, then replied at length. Sam's expression grew increasingly concerned as the conversation continued. "What's happening?" Deirdre demanded when they finished. "Your father has convinced the army that we've been kidnapped by Apaches," Sam explained, his voice tight. "They're preparing to attack the camp to rescue us." Horror washed through Deirdre. "But that's not true. We have to stop them." "Stone Talker is preparing his warriors," Sam continued. "Broken Shield wants to move the women and children to a safer location, but there's not enough time." "What can we do?" Deirdre asked desperately. Sam's eyes were hard as flint. "We need to reach your father before the shooting starts. Make him understand the truth." "He won't listen to me," Deirdre said bitterly. "Then we'll make him listen," Sam replied. He turned to Broken Shield, speaking rapidly. The war chief nodded, then barked orders to several warriors nearby. "They're returning our horses and weapons," Sam explained. "We'll ride out to meet the soldiers before they reach the valley." As they mounted up, Stone Talker approached, leaning heavily on a gnarled staff. He spoke to Sam, his voice grave. "What did he say?" Deirdre asked as they prepared to ride. "That blood spilled today will flow for generations," Sam translated. "And that sometimes courage means standing between two fires." They rode hard down the hidden trails leading from the Apache camp, guided by Broken Shield and two other warriors. The sun was barely above the horizon as they emerged onto the plain where the soldiers and Deirdre's father were approaching. "Wait here," Sam instructed the Apache warriors. "If shooting starts, return to your people." Broken Shield nodded grimly, then spoke directly to Deirdre in halting English. "Little Hawk, good man. You good woman. Maybe someday no more fighting." Emotion tightened Deirdre's throat. "Thank you," she managed. Sam and Deirdre rode forward alone, their horses kicking up dust as they approached the column of soldiers. At their head rode Captain Hendricks, a man Deirdre recognized from his occasional visits to Whispering Creek, and beside him, her father's tall figure was unmistakable. "Hold there," Captain Hendricks called, raising his hand to halt his men. "Identify yourselves, Samuel Ackerman and Deirdre Norton," Sam called back. "We're not hostages, Captain. There's been a misunderstanding." Deirdre's father pushed his horse forward, his face a mask of fury. "Deirdre, get away from that man immediately." "Father, you need to listen," Deirdre pleaded. "There's no danger here. The Apache haven't harmed us, they've offered shelter and assistance." "Nonsense," her father spat. "You've been coerced. This man kidnapped you from our home." "I left willingly," Deirdre insisted. "To escape being forced to marry a man. I don't love a man old enough to be my grandfather." Captain Hendricks frowned, looking between them. "Mr. Norton, you told me your daughter had been abducted by Apache raiders, along with this man." "She's confused," her father insisted. "Been through a terrible ordeal." "I'm not confused," Deirdre said firmly. "I left Whispering Creek of my own accord because my father was punishing me for a friendship he didn't approve of. Mr. Ackerman has been helping me reach California safely." "A likely story," her father sneered. "Captain, I demand you arrest this man and return my daughter to my custody immediately." Captain Hendricks hesitated, his gaze assessing Sam carefully. "Mr. Ackerman, I know your reputation. You fought with distinction in the war, and you've done work for the army since." He glanced at Deirdre. "Is what the young lady says true?" "Every word," Sam confirmed. "Mr. Norton misrepresented the situation to secure your assistance. There are no hostile Apache in this area, only a peaceful band that offered us shelter for the night." "Lies," Norton exploded. "The Apache are savages. They've corrupted my daughter's mind with their heathen ways." "The only corruption has been your cruelty, father," Deirdre retorted, her patience snapping. "You've never forgiven me for Mother's death, never shown me a father's love. And when I found friendship with someone who showed me kindness, you condemned me for it." A tense silence followed her outburst. The soldiers shifted uncomfortably in their saddles, while Captain Hendricks looked increasingly troubled. "Captain," Sam said quietly, "there are Apache warriors watching us right now. If you proceed toward their camp, there will be bloodshed, unnecessary bloodshed based on a lie." Hendricks scanned the surrounding terrain, his expression grim. "I have my orders, Mr. Ackerman. Based on false information," Sam pressed. "Think of your men, Captain. How many will die for one man's pride?" The captain was silent for a long moment, weighing his options. Finally, he turned to Deirdre's father. "Mr. Norton, it appears there's more to this situation than you indicated." "This is outrageous," Norton sputtered. "She is my daughter, my property until she marries." "I am not property," Deirdre stated, her voice ringing clear in the morning air. "I am a woman of 22 years capable of making my own choices, and I choose freedom from your control." Captain Hendricks studied her, then nodded slowly. "Miss Norton is of age, Mr. Norton. In the absence of evidence of kidnapping or coercion, I have no authority to compel her return." "You'll regret this," Norton threatened, his face mottled with rage. He turned to Deirdre. "And you're no daughter of mine. Don't ever think of returning to Whispering Creek." "I won't," Deirdre replied steadily, though his words cut deeper than she wanted to admit. Captain Hendricks signaled his men to turn back. "Mr. Ackerman, I suggest you and Miss Norton continue your journey promptly." "I cannot guarantee Mr. Norton won't find other means to pursue this matter." "Understood, Captain," Sam acknowledged. "Thank you for your discretion." As the soldiers departed, with Deirdre's father casting one last venomous glance over his shoulder, Sam and Deirdre remained where they were, watching until the column disappeared into the distance. "It's over," Deirdre breathed, hardly believing it. "For now," Sam cautioned. "Your father isn't a man to surrender easily." They returned to where Broken Shield waited with his warriors, explaining what had transpired. The Apache leader nodded with satisfaction, then led them back to the camp, where Stone Talker received the news with grave dignity. "The chief says we are welcome to rest here today," Sam translated. "Tomorrow, 2 warriors will guide us safely through their territory toward the trading post." That night, the Apache held a modest celebration, grateful for the averted conflict. There was dancing and music, and Deirdre found herself welcomed into a circle of women who showed her how they ground seeds into meal and wove intricate baskets from grasses and reeds. Sam sat with the men, smoking a pipe and conversing in their language. Occasionally, Deirdre caught him watching her across the fire, his expression thoughtful. Later, as they returned to their shelter, Deirdre felt a strange mixture of emotions: relief that the confrontation with her father was behind her, sorrow at his final rejection, and uncertainty about what lay ahead. "What troubles you?" Sam asked, noting her pensive mood. "Everything has happened so quickly," she replied. "A week ago my life was predictable. Now I've been disowned by my father, befriended by Apache, and I'm heading to a city I've never seen with a man I barely know." Sam smiled slightly. "Life rarely warns us before it changes course." No, it doesn't, Deirdre agreed. She hesitated, then asked, "What will you do when we reach San Bernardino?" "Continue my work, I suppose," he replied, then added more softly, "though I find myself less eager to move on than I once was." Their eyes met in the dim light of the shelter, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of how their lives had become unexpectedly entwined. "We should rest," Sam said finally, breaking the moment. "Tomorrow brings new challenges." The journey to the trading post took 3 days, guided by the Apache warriors who knew hidden trails and water sources invisible to most travelers. They moved through stunning landscapes, towering mesas, hidden canyons, forests of ancient pines that Deirdre would never have discovered on the main routes. During those days, she and Sam grew closer, their conversations ranging from philosophy to practical skills. He taught her to read trails and predict weather from cloud patterns, while she shared her knowledge of medicinal plants, some learned from Little Hawk, others from her own observations. When they reached Jackson's trading post, a ramshackle collection of buildings at the crossroads of several trails, the Apache guides took their leave, melting back into the landscape as silently as they had appeared. The trading post was a hub of activity, with freight wagons, prospectors, and travelers of all descriptions passing through. Deirdre drew curious glances as she and Sam entered the main building. A woman traveling with just one man was uncommon enough to raise eyebrows. Jackson himself was a weathered man with one eye and a perpetual scowl. He greeted Sam with gruff familiarity. "Ackerman, been a while. Thought the Comanche might have got you last winter." "Not for lack of trying," Sam replied, shaking the man's hand. Jackson's good eye settled on Deirdre. "Who's the lady?" "Deirdre Norton," Sam said. "A friend. We need supplies for the journey to San Bernardino." "Heading to California, eh?" Jackson grunted. "Lot of folks doing that these days, railroads making it easier." He eyed Deirdre speculatively. "Don't see many genteel ladies out this way." "I'm hardly genteel," Deirdre replied with a small smile. "Just practical." Jackson laughed, a rusty sound like an old hinge. "I like her, Ackerman. You finally found yourself a woman with sense." As Sam negotiated for supplies, Deirdre wandered the trading post, examining the eclectic merchandise, everything from basic staples to exotic items brought from the coasts. In one corner, an elderly native woman sat selling handcrafted items. Beaded moccasins, woven blankets, and small pouches of herbs. Deirdre approached, drawn by the familiar scent of medicinal plants. The woman looked up, her face deeply lined but her eyes bright with intelligence. "You know plants," she observed in accented English. "I see in your eyes," Deirdre nodded. "I'm learning. These are healing herbs for many sickness," the woman confirmed. "You healer, I hope to be," Deirdre replied honestly. The woman studied her, then selected several pouches. "These good for woman healer to know. For women problems, for birth pain, for fever." "Thank you," Deirdre said, reaching for her small purse. The woman shook her head. "No money, gift for one who listens to plants." She pressed the pouches into Deirdre's hands. "Plants speak quiet, many not hear." "You hear." Touched by the unexpected kindness, Deirdre thanked her again. "What's your name?" she asked. "White Bird," the woman replied. "Of the Navajo people, I'm Deirdre Norton." White Bird nodded. "Good name. Strong name." She glanced toward Sam, who was still haggling with Jackson. "He good man. Shadows in eyes, but good heart." "Yes," Deirdre agreed softly. "He is, you care for him," White Bird observed. Deirdre flushed. "He's been kind to me." The old woman smiled knowingly. "Heart knows before head, listen to heart." Before Deirdre could respond, Sam approached, carrying a bundle of supplies. "Ready?" he asked. "I've secured us rooms for the night. We'll head out at dawn." That evening they dined in the trading post's small tavern, surrounded by a motley assortment of travelers, trappers, and local ranchers. The food was simple but plentiful, and for the first time in days, Deirdre enjoyed the comfort of a chair and table. "From here, we have two options," Sam explained as they ate. "We can continue west through Apache Pass to Tucson, then follow the southern route to California, or head northwest toward the Colorado River crossing." "Which is safer?" Deirdre asked. "Neither is without risk," Sam admitted. "Apache Pass has seen raids recently, but the southern route is better patrolled. The northwestern route is more isolated but takes us through less disputed territory." Deirdre considered this. "How long to San Bernardino either way?" 3 weeks, give or take, depending on weather and other factors. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion at the tavern door. A group of men entered, trail dusty and loud, demanding whiskey and food. They took a table near Deirdre and Sam, their boisterous laughter filling the room. Sam tensed almost imperceptibly. "Bounty hunters," he murmured to Deirdre. "Best avoid drawing attention." They finished their meal quietly, but as they rose to leave, one of the newcomers noticed them. "Well, look what we have here," he called, his speech slightly slurred. "A pretty lady in this God-forsaken place." Deirdre kept her eyes downcast, moving toward the door with Sam close beside her. "Hey, I'm talking to you, sweetheart," the man persisted, rising from his chair. "Don't be unfriendly now." "The lady's tired," Sam said firmly. "Good evening, gentlemen." The man blocked their path, swaying slightly. "Don't recall inviting you into the conversation, mister." Sam's posture shifted subtly, and Deirdre recognized the coiled readiness in his stance. "We're just passing through," he said evenly. "No trouble needed." One of the other bounty hunters stood, joining his companion. "Wait a minute, I know you." He peered at Sam in the dim light. "You're Ackerman, ain't you? The scout who turned on his own kind at Yellow Creek." A dangerous silence fell over the room. Sam's expression didn't change, but something cold entered his eyes. "You must be mistaken," he said quietly. "No mistake," the man insisted. "You're the one who helped those Apache escape when the army had him cornered, cost a dozen soldiers their lives." Sam's jaw tightened. "That's not how it happened." "Traitor's what you are," the first man spat, "siding with savages against your own people." Deirdre felt rage building within her. "You know nothing about him or what happened," she said, her voice sharp with anger. The men's attention shifted to her, their expressions darkening. "Got yourself an Indian lover too, Ackerman. Figures." Sam's hand moved to his revolver. "That's enough. Apologize to the lady and we'll be on our way." "Or what?" the second man challenged, his own hand hovering near his weapon. The tense standoff was broken by Jackson's gruff voice. "Not in my place," the trading post owner barked, a shotgun cradled in his arms. "Take it outside or not at all." The bounty hunters hesitated, measuring the situation. Finally, the first man stepped back with a sneer. "Another time, Ackerman. When you don't have a woman to hide behind." They returned to their table, still muttering insults. Sam guided Deirdre quickly to the door, nodding thanks to Jackson as they passed. Outside, the night air was cool and clear, stars scattered like diamond dust across the vast canvas of sky. "What was that about?" Deirdre asked as they walked toward the small building where their rooms were located. "Yellow Creek." Sam's face was grim in the moonlight. "A misunderstanding that cost lives. 3 years ago, the army cornered a band of Apache near Yellow Creek. Women and children mostly, with a few warriors. I was scouting for the army then." "What happened?" "The commanding officer wanted to make an example of them, even though they'd committed no hostilities," Sam continued, his voice tight with old anger. "I tried to negotiate a peaceful surrender. When that failed, I helped some of them escape through a ravine the soldiers didn't know about. The soldiers who died weren't killed by the escaping Apache, Sam finished. They were killed when their commander ordered an ill-advised charge into a defensible position where the remaining warriors were protecting the last of the women and children. His eyes were distant with memory. I tried to stop it. No one listened. So they blame you for deaths you tried to prevent, Deirdre said softly. Army needed a scapegoat, Sam replied simply. Easier to blame one scout than admit a captain's incompetence. They reached the boarding house, pausing at the door to Deirdre's room. I'm sorry, she said. About tonight. About Yellow Creek, about all of it. Sam's expression softened slightly. Don't be. Everyone makes choices they have to live with. Mine were hard, but I'd make them again. Impulsively, Deirdre reached out, touching his arm. Thank you for everything you've done for me. His gaze met hers, and for a moment, something warm and unexpected passed between them. Then he stepped back, clearing his throat. Get some rest, he said. Dawn comes early. In her small room, Deirdre lay awake long into the night, thinking about Sam Ackerman, the complexity of the man, his hidden depths, the pain he carried, and the principles he refused to compromise. She had never met anyone like him, and the realization that she was beginning to care for him in ways that went beyond gratitude was both exhilarating and terrifying. They departed at first light, taking the northwestern route toward the Colorado River. The landscape grew increasingly rugged and beautiful as they traveled, vast expanses of desert giving way to dramatic mesas and hidden valleys. This country gets in your blood, Sam commented, as they paused to rest the horses on the third day. I've traveled from coast to coast, but nowhere feels quite like this raw and honest. It's magnificent, Deirdre agreed, gazing at the sweeping vistas before them. Though I don't know if I could live with such isolation forever. Most can't, Sam acknowledged. It takes a particular kind of soul to find peace in silence and solitude. Is that what you found? Peace? Sam considered the question seriously. At times, more often I've found clarity. The desert doesn't lie or pretend. It simply is, and it asks the same of those who journey through it. And what has it shown you about yourself? Deirdre asked. A small smile touched his lips. That I'm as stubborn as the land itself, and that some principles are worth any cost. They continued their journey, falling into a comfortable rhythm of travel by day and camp by night. Deirdre found herself increasingly drawn to Sam's quiet strength, his unexpected moments of gentleness, and the depths of knowledge he shared without pretension. For his part, Sam seemed to find pleasure in her company, his reserved nature gradually giving way to more open conversation and even occasional laughter. He taught her to shoot properly, to navigate by stars, to find water where none seemed possible, skills that transformed her from a dependent companion to a capable partner in their journey. One evening, as they camped beside a small spring sheltered by cottonwoods, Sam returned from hunting with a brace of rabbits to find Deirdre kneeling beside their gear, examining his worn leather journal. I'm sorry, she said, quickly setting it aside. I shouldn't have pried. To her surprise, Sam wasn't angry. It's all right, he said, settling beside her to prepare the rabbits for cooking. Not much in their worth, keeping private, just notes on trails and water sources mostly. And sketches, Deirdre added. Beautiful ones. I didn't know you were an artist. Sam looked almost embarrassed. Hardly that. Just a way to remember places that matter. May I? Deirdre asked, gesturing to the journal. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. Deirdre opened the book carefully, turning pages filled with detailed maps, observations on wildlife, and delicate pencil drawings of landscapes, plants, and occasionally, people. Near the back, She found a sketch that made her breath catch. It was her own face, rendered with surprising tenderness as she slept beside a campfire, her features peaceful in repose. "When did you draw this?" she asked softly. "A few nights ago," Sam admitted, not meeting her eyes. "I should have asked permission." "It's beautiful," Deirdre said, touched by the care evident in each line. "No one's ever seen me that way before." "What way?" Sam asked, finally looking at her. "As something worth preserving," she replied simply. The air between them changed, charged with unspoken feelings. Sam's hand moved toward hers, then hesitated. "Deirdre," he began, his voice unusually uncertain, "I know you care for little Hawk. I don't want to." A distant sound interrupted him, hoofbeats, approaching fast. Sam was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand. "Into the trees," he ordered, all softness gone from his voice. "Now." Deirdre obeyed, gathering their most essential belongings as Sam doused the fire. They retreated into the dense stand of cottonwoods as 3 riders appeared on the ridge above the spring. "Bounty hunters," Sam whispered. "Same ones from the trading post." They watched as the men dismounted, examining the remains of their camp. "They're still here," one called. "Fire's fresh. Spread out and find them." Sam turned to Deirdre, his expression grim. "When I create a distraction, take the horses and head northwest. There's a canyon about 5 miles ahead where you can hide." "I'm not leaving you," Deirdre protested. "This isn't a debate," Sam replied firmly. "These men want me, not you. Get to safety and I'll find you when I can." Before she could argue further, one of the hunters approached their hiding place. Sam signaled for silence, then slipped away through the trees. Moments later, a shot rang out from the opposite side of the spring. As 2 of the bounty hunters raced toward the sound, the third continued his search. Moving steadily closer to where Deirdre hid, she held her breath, pressing herself against the rough bark of a cottonwood. The hunter paused mere feet away, scanning the undergrowth. Then, with deliberate slowness, he turned directly toward her hiding place, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "Well, look what we have here," he drawled, leveling his rifle at her. "Come on out, pretty lady, nice and slow." Deirdre emerged from hiding, her heart pounding but her chin raised defiantly. "Where's Ackerman?" the man demanded. "Gone," she replied. "He left hours ago," the hunter laughed. "Liar. I heard him talking to you not 5 minutes past." He grabbed her arm roughly. "You're coming with me. Your boyfriend will show himself soon enough to save you." "I don't need saving," Deirdre said coldly, and in one swift motion, drew the small pistol from her belt and pressed it against the man's ribs. Surprise flickered across his face, quickly replaced by anger. You little the rest of his insult was lost as Sam appeared behind him, the butt of his rifle connecting with the hunter's skull. The man crumpled, unconscious. "Are you all right?" Sam asked urgently. Deirdre nodded, still gripping her pistol. "The others?" "Distracted for now, but not for long," Sam replied. "We need to move quickly." They retrieved their horses and supplies, working with practiced efficiency. As they prepared to ride out, the sound of returning footsteps sent them diving for cover once more. "Mitch, where are you?" one of the hunters called. Sam signaled to Deirdre, 3 fingers raised, then pointed in different directions. 3 hunters separated. She nodded her understanding. "When I move, ride northwest as fast as you can," Sam whispered. "Don't stop until you reach the canyon." "Not without you," Deirdre insisted. Something softened in Sam's eyes. "Stubborn woman," he murmured, almost fondly. "Then we ride together, on my signal." The hunters were closing in, calling for their missing companion. Sam waited until they had spread out sufficiently, then shouted, "Now!" They burst from cover, spurring their horses forward. Gunshots erupted behind them, bullets whizzing overhead as they galloped across the open ground toward the shelter of distant hills. Deirdre bent low over her mare's neck, the wind rushing past her ears, nearly drowning out the continued gunfire. Sam rode beside her, occasionally twisting in the saddle to fire back at their pursuers. They rode hard for miles, not slowing until the sound of pursuit had faded and the rugged terrain offered protection from distant eyes. As they finally reined in their exhausted horses, Deirdre felt the delayed shock of their narrow escape washing through her. "We can't stop long," Sam warned, scanning their back trail. "They'll follow." "Who are they?" Deirdre asked, her breathing still ragged. "What do they want with you?" "Bounty," Sam replied grimly. "After Yellow Creek, there were those who put a price on my head. Military officially cleared me, but some still consider me a traitor." He checked his rifle, counting remaining ammunition. "Those men are just opportunists looking for easy money." "Will they follow us all the way to California?" "Not if I can help it," Sam said, determination hardening his features. "I know these lands better than they do. We'll lose them in the canyons ahead." They pushed on through the night, guided by starlight and Sam's intimate knowledge of the terrain. By dawn, they had reached a labyrinthine network of slot canyons where water had carved narrow passages through ancient stone. "We'll rest here briefly," Sam decided, selecting a hidden grotto with access to a small spring. "The horses need water, and so do we." As they tended to their mounts, Deirdre noticed Sam favoring his left arm. "You're hurt," she said, moving closer. "Let me see." "It's nothing," he dismissed. "Bullet grazed me during our escape." Deirdre ignored his protest, examining the bloody tear in his sleeve. The wound beneath was shallow but needed cleaning. "Sit," she commanded, retrieving her medicine pouch. "This could become infected if not treated properly." Surprisingly, Sam obeyed, watching with a mixture of amusement and respect as she cleaned the wound with water and a tincture of yarrow she had prepared days earlier. "Your hands are steady," he observed as she worked. "A natural healer." "I've had practice," Deirdre replied, focused on her task. "My father's ranch hands were always getting injured." "Is that what drew you to medicine initially? Necessity?" Deirdre considered the question as she bandaged his arm with a clean strip of cloth. "Partly, but mostly it was my mother's death. I grew up hearing how she might have been saved if the doctor had reached her sooner, if someone had known what to do. I thought if I learned enough, maybe I could prevent others from suffering the same fate." "Noble purpose," Sam commented. "What about you?" Deirdre asked. "What made you choose this life, always moving, never settling?" Sam was quiet for a long moment. "After the war, I couldn't go home. Too many ghosts, too many memories. Out here, a man is judged by what he does, not where he's from or which side he fought for." He flexed his bandaged arm experimentally. "And there's a kind of freedom in having nothing to lose." "Nothing?" Deirdre questioned softly. Their eyes met, and something vulnerable flickered in Sam's gaze. "That was true once," he admitted. "Less so now." Before he could elaborate, the distant sound of voices echoed through the canyon. Sam was instantly alert, motioning for silence. "They've found our trail," he whispered. "We need to move deeper into the canyon system." They gathered their belongings and led the horses carefully through the narrow passages, seeking routes too confined for horseback travel. The canyon walls rose around them, streaked with reds and oranges in the morning light, beautiful despite the danger. "The passages branch up ahead," Sam explained quietly as they walked. "We'll take the Western Fork. It's more difficult to navigate, but it leads to a hidden valley where we can rest properly. And our pursuers, the Eastern Fork is more obvious. With luck, they'll take that path and emerge miles from our position." They continued in tense silence, every sound magnified by the canyon walls. At one point, the passage narrowed so severely they had to coax the nervous horses through sideways. Sam's soothing whispers keeping the animals calm. Finally, they emerged into a breathtaking hidden valley, a secret paradise nestled between towering cliffs. A small stream wound through lush vegetation, and wildflowers dotted the grassy floor. "It's beautiful," Deirdre breathed, momentarily forgetting their peril. "The Apache call it the place where spirits rest," Sam explained, leading the horses to water. "Few white men know of its existence." "How do you know it?" "Tall Bear showed me during my time with his people," Sam replied. "It was a gesture of trust I've never betrayed." "We should be safe here while we rest and plan our next move." They established a small camp against the valley wall, where an overhanging shelf of rock provided natural shelter. Sam insisted on taking first watch while Deirdre rested, despite her protests that he needed sleep after his injury. "I've gone longer without sleep in worse circumstances," he assured her. "Rest. I'll wake you if there's trouble." Exhaustion won out, and Deirdre fell into a deep sleep, lulled by the gentle murmur of the stream and the knowledge that Sam was watching over her. When she woke, the sun had moved significantly in the sky, and Sam was no longer at his post. Alarm shot through her until she spotted him kneeling by the stream, washing his face and hands. She watched him for a moment, struck by how different he looked with his guard lowered, younger somehow, less burdened by the weight he typically carried. He sensed her gaze and turned, offering a small smile. "You slept well." "Too well," Deirdre replied, joining him by the water. "You should have woken me for my turn at watch. You needed the rest," he said simply, "and I needed to think." "About what?" Sam gazed out across the valley, his expression thoughtful. "About what happens when we reach San Bernardino, about what comes next." "And?" Deirdre prompted when he didn't continue. "And I find myself wondering if my wandering days might be coming to an end," he said quietly. "If perhaps there might be something worth staying in one place for." The implication hung in the air between them, unspoken but undeniable. Deirdre felt her heart quicken. "Sam," she began, uncertain how to express the confusing tangle of emotions she felt. He turned to face her fully. "Deirdre, I know this isn't the right time or place. We're being hunted. Our future is uncertain, and you've barely had a chance to know your own mind after leaving everything behind." But the sharp crack of a rifle shot shattered the moment, the bullet throwing up dirt at their feet. Sam reacted instantly, tackling Deirdre to the ground and covering her body with his own as more shots followed. "The cliff face," he hissed, pointing to where at least 2 shooters were visible on the rim above. "They found us." "How?" Deirdre gasped, the wind knocked from her lungs. "Questions later," Sam replied grimly. "We need cover now." Staying low, they scrambled toward the rocky overhang where their gear was stowed. Bullets kicked up dust around them as they ran, but the shooters were firing from a difficult angle, their accuracy compromised by distance. Reaching relative safety, Sam grabbed his rifle and returned fire, forcing the bounty hunters to duck back from the cliff edge. "There's no way out except through the canyon we entered by," he said, his voice tense. "And they'll have that covered." "What do we do?" Deirdre asked, struggling to keep her fear contained. Sam's eyes scanned the valley, calculating possibilities. "There's another way," he said finally. "A narrow passage through the western cliff face. The Apache use it, but it's difficult to spot unless you know exactly where to look." "Can we reach it?" "Not without crossing open ground," Sam admitted. "They'd have clear shots at us for at least 100 yards. More bullets struck near their shelter, sending stone fragments flying. One of their horses whinnied in panic, straining at its tether. "We're running out of options," Deirdre observed, her voice surprisingly steady despite the danger. Sam studied her face, something resolute settling in his expression. "I'll draw their fire," he decided. Create a distraction while you make for the western passage. Once you're clear, head southwest. There's a mission settlement 2 days' ride from here where you'll find help." "No," Deirdre said firmly. "I won't leave you to face them alone." "This isn't a debate," Sam insisted. "These men want me, not you. There's no reason for both of us to risk our lives." "There's every reason," Deirdre countered, surprising him with her vehemence. "We started this journey together and we'll finish it together." Her eyes held his, unwavering. "I'm not leaving you, Sam Ackerman. Not now, not ever." Something shifted in Sam's gaze, a realization, perhaps, or a surrender. "Stubborn woman," he murmured, but there was affection in the words. "Now," Deirdre said practically, "what's our actual plan?" Sam's lips curved in a reluctant smile. "We wait for darkness," he decided. "The passage will be harder to navigate at night, but it gives us our best chance of slipping away unseen." They settled in to wait, conserving ammunition by firing only when the hunters attempted to descend into the valley. As dusk approached, the shooters grew more cautious, perhaps wary of wasting bullets in the failing light. "They'll expect us to wait until full dark," Sam observed. "We'll move at twilight when visibility is poorest, but before they're prepared for night operations." As the sun dipped below the western rim, painting the sky in dramatic oranges and purples, they readied themselves. Sam showed Deirdre the path they would take, an almost invisible crack in the cliff face that, upon closer inspection, revealed itself as a narrow but passable route. "We'll have to leave the horses," he said regretfully. "The passage is too narrow and they'd give away our position regardless." Deirdre nodded, gathering only essential supplies into a small pack. "Will they be all right? The valley has water and grass." "They'll survive until someone finds them," Sam replied. "And the Apache sometimes come here. They'll respect the animals if they discover them." With the last rays of sunlight fading, they prepared to make their move. Sam checked his revolver one final time, then turned to Deirdre. "Stay close, move quickly, and no matter what happens, don't stop until you're through the passage," he instructed. Deirdre reached out, touching his face gently. "We go together," she reminded him softly. For a moment, they stood frozen in the gathering dusk, the danger around them momentarily forgotten as something profound and unspoken passed between them. Then Sam nodded once, determination replacing vulnerability. "Now," he whispered. They burst from their shelter, sprinting across the open ground toward the hidden passage. Almost immediately, shots rang out from the cliff above, but the fading light made accuracy difficult. Sam returned fire as they ran, forcing the hunters to take cover. They were halfway across the valley when a bullet kicked up dirt dangerously close to Deirdre's feet. She stumbled, and Sam caught her arm, steadying her without breaking stride. "Almost there," he encouraged, his voice tight with effort. They reached the cliff face, Sam guiding Deirdre to the narrow opening that was barely visible in the dying light. As she slipped into the passage, she turned back to make sure Sam was following just in time to see him grunt in pain as a bullet found its mark. "Sam," she cried, reaching for him. "Keep going," he ordered through gritted teeth, shoving her forward as he returned fire with his revolver. "I'm right behind you." The passage was tight and dark, forcing them to move sideways in places. Deirdre could hear Sam's labored breathing behind her, punctuated by occasional muttered curses when the narrow walls pressed against his injured side. "How bad?" she asked over her shoulder, unable to see him clearly in the darkness. "I'll live," came the terse reply. "Just keep moving." They continued through the twisting passage for what seemed like hours, though it could only have been minutes. Finally, the walls widened slightly, and ahead, Deirdre could see stars appearing. They were nearing the exit. "Wait," Sam cautioned, his voice strained. "Let me check first." He moved past her carefully, his face a pale oval in the darkness. At the mouth of the passage he paused, listening intently before peering cautiously outside. "Clear," he whispered. "But we need to keep moving. They'll circle around once they realize we've escaped the valley." As they emerged onto a narrow ledge overlooking a moonlit canyon below, Deirdre could finally see the extent of Sam's injury. Blood had soaked the left side of his shirt, and his face was drawn with pain. "Let me tend to that wound first," she insisted. "No time," Sam replied, glancing back toward the passage. "We need distance before we stop." He led the way down a precarious trail that descended into the canyon, moving with determination despite his injury. Deirdre followed closely, worry gnawing at her as she noted how his steps occasionally faltered. They had reached the canyon floor and covered perhaps a mile when Sam finally stumbled, catching himself against a boulder. "Now we stop," Deirdre said firmly, no longer accepting argument. "You're losing too much blood." Too exhausted to protest further, Sam allowed her to help him to a sheltered spot among the rocks. By moonlight, Deirdre examined the wound a bullet had torn through the flesh of his side, missing vital organs but leaving a nasty furrow that continued to bleed steadily. Working quickly with their limited supplies, she cleaned and bandaged the injury, using yarrow to help staunch the bleeding and a tincture of willow bark for pain. "You'd make a fine doctor," Sam commented, his voice weaker than Deirdre liked. "Be still and save your strength," she chided gently. "You've lost a lot of blood." "Not my first bullet wound," he assured her, though his pallor belied his attempted bravado. "And hopefully your last," Deirdre replied, settling beside him to share her body heat as the night grew colder. "Rest now, I'll keep watch." Despite his protests, Sam soon drifted into an uneasy sleep, his head eventually coming to rest against Deirdre's shoulder. She sat awake through the long hours of the night, listening for pursuit while monitoring his breathing and the slow seep of blood through his bandages. By dawn, she was exhausted but relieved to find his fever mild and the bleeding stopped. When Sam woke, his eyes were clearer, though pain still lined his face. "We need to keep moving," he said immediately, struggling to sit upright. "The bounty hunters will be searching the area, yes," Deirdre acknowledged, "but you're in no condition to travel quickly. We need a place to hole up until you're stronger." Sam studied her determined expression, then nodded reluctantly. "There's a place about 2 miles south, an old miner's cabin tucked into the hillside. If it hasn't collapsed since I last saw it, it would provide shelter." They set out slowly, Sam leaning on Deirdre more than he would have liked. The terrain was challenging, rocky and steep in places, but they made steady progress, pausing frequently to rest. By mid-morning, they reached the cabin Sam had described. It was little more than a crude shelter of logs and stone, half hidden by scrub brush, but its roof was intact and its walls solid. "Not exactly the Grand Hotel," Sam commented wryly as they entered the dim interior, "but it'll serve." Deirdre helped him to a crude pallet in the corner, then set about making the place more habitable. She found a small spring nearby for water, collected edible plants she recognized from Little Hawk's teachings, and even managed to set snares that yielded 2 rabbits by evening. As night fell, she prepared a simple stew over a carefully shielded fire, the familiar routine of camp cooking oddly comforting after their harrowing escape. Sam watched her work, his expression thoughtful. "You've changed since Whispering Creek," he observed. "Grown stronger." Deirdre considered this as she stirred the pot. "Perhaps," she agreed. "Or perhaps I was always this way, just waiting for the opportunity to discover it." "Freedom suits you," Sam said softly. She brought him a portion of the stew, settling beside him on the pallet. "How's the pain?" "Manageable," he replied, though the tightness around his eyes suggested otherwise. "We should be able to move on tomorrow." "Not until I'm satisfied you won't collapse halfway up a mountain," Deirdre countered firmly. "The bounty hunters have lost our trail for now. We can afford a day or two of rest." Sam studied her face in the firelight. "When did you become so commanding, Miss Norton?" "When I realized that stubbornness isn't solely a male trait, Mr. Ackerman," she replied with a small smile. They ate in companionable silence, the simple meal tasting better than any fancy dinner Deirdre had ever had in Whispering Creek. Afterward, she checked Sam's wound, pleased to find it showing signs of healthy healing. "You have a gift," Sam commented as she replaced the bandage. "Not just technical skill, but a healer's intuition." "Little Hawk said something similar," Deirdre replied, a shadow crossing her face at the memory. "He believed healing was as much about intention as knowledge." "You still think of him," Sam observed, his tone carefully neutral. Deirdre met his gaze directly. "Yes," she admitted. "He was kind to me when few others were. He taught me much about medicine that I'd never have learned otherwise. I respect him deeply." "And more than respect?" Sam asked quietly. "Once, perhaps," Deirdre acknowledged after a moment's hesitation. "But what might have been doesn't matter now. Our paths diverged the moment I left Whispering Creek." She hesitated, then added softly, "And other feelings have developed since then." Sam's eyes held hers, a question in their depths that he seemed unwilling to voice. Instead, he reached out, his hand covering hers where it rested on the rough blanket. "Get some rest," he said finally. "Tomorrow will bring its own challenges." The following day brought rain, a steady, soaking downpour that turned the ground to mud and made travel impossible. They remained in the cabin, Sam gradually regaining strength while Deirdre prepared medicines from the plants she'd gathered and repaired tears in their clothing. By evening, the rain had settled into a gentle patter on the roof, creating a cozy atmosphere despite the cabin's primitive conditions. Sam was sitting up, cleaning his revolver with methodical care when he suddenly paused, his head tilting toward the door. "What is it?" Deirdre asked, instantly alert. "Horses," Sam replied, reaching for his rifle. "At least two, maybe more." They extinguished the small fire immediately, plunging the cabin into darkness save for the faint gray light filtering through cracks in the walls. Sam positioned himself near the door, rifle ready, while Deirdre took up his revolver, moving to a vantage point by the cabin's single small window. The sound of hoofbeats grew louder, then slowed to a walk. Low voices carried through the rain, indistinct but clearly searching. "Tracks around here somewhere. Waste of time in this mud. Bounty's good, worth the trouble." Sam and Deirdre exchanged grim glances. The hunters had found their general location, if not the cabin itself. Minutes stretched into an hour as they remained motionless in the gathering darkness, listening as the searchers combed the area. Several times, riders passed within yards of the cabin, but the rain and encroaching night helped mask their hiding place. Finally, the sounds receded, moving northward up the canyon. "They'll be back at first light," Sam predicted quietly. "We need to be gone before then." "Your wound," Deirdre began. "We'll have to manage," Sam finished firmly. "I've traveled with worse." They packed their meager supplies and prepared to leave, knowing that traveling by night in unfamiliar terrain was risky but less dangerous than remaining to be discovered. As Sam checked his weapons one final time, Deirdre watched him, noting the determination in his movements despite the pain he couldn't entirely hide. "Why are you doing this?" she asked suddenly. "Risking your life for me?" "You could have handed me over to my father or left me to make my own way at any point." Sam looked up, surprise flickering across his features. "You know why," he said simply. "I want to hear you say it," Deirdre insisted, her heart pounding. Sam set his rifle aside, moving to stand before her in the dim cabin. "Because from the moment I saw you at that crossroads, something in me recognized something in you," he said quietly. "A kindred spirit, perhaps. Someone who understands what it means to stand by your convictions, even when the world tells you you're wrong." He reached out, his calloused fingers gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Because every day with you has shown me a strength and courage I've rarely encountered. Because you've made me question whether the solitary path I've chosen is truly the only one available to me." His voice dropped lower, intimate in the darkness. "Because I've spent years wandering, Deirdre, and only now do I feel I've found something worth stopping for." Emotion tightened Deirdre's throat. "And what if I'm not staying in San Bernardino?" she asked. "What if I haven't decided where my path leads next?" "Then I'll follow," Sam replied simply. "If you'll have me." The last barrier between them dissolved in that moment. Deirdre stepped forward, her hands coming to rest against his chest as she lifted her face to his. "I don't want to run anymore," she whispered. "Not from this." Sam's arms encircled her, careful of his wounded side, drawing her closer. "Then don't," he murmured and lowered his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if both were afraid the moment might shatter. Then Deirdre's arms slid around his neck, and something deeper awakened between them, a hunger born of shared danger and growing affection, of recognition and possibility. When they finally parted, both breathing quickly, Sam rested his forehead against hers. "I never expected to find you," he admitted softly. "Nor I you," Deirdre replied, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "But now I can't imagine continuing without you." They might have remained lost in each other longer had not the distant sound of voices reminded them of their precarious situation. Reluctantly separating, they gathered their belongings and prepared to slip away into the rainy night. "Which way?" Deirdre asked as they paused at the cabin door, listening for signs of the hunters. "Southwest," Sam decided. "Toward the mission I mentioned. If we push hard, we can reach it by tomorrow evening." "And after that?" Deirdre asked, needing to hear his thoughts on their future. Sam's eyes were steady on hers, even in the darkness. "After that, we decide together. San Bernardino or somewhere else entirely. Wherever we go as partners." Deirdre smiled, a warmth spreading through her despite the cold rain that awaited them. "Partners," she agreed, the word carrying promises neither was ready to fully voice. They slipped from the cabin into the wet darkness, moving carefully down the hillside away from the direction the hunters had taken. The rain had slackened to a drizzle, and occasional breaks in the clouds revealed glimpses of stars overhead. They traveled through the night, following game trails and dry washes, avoiding open ground where possible. Sam's injury slowed them somewhat, but he pushed through the pain with grim determination, refusing to rest until they had put significant distance between themselves and their pursuers. Dawn found them in rolling hill country, the mountains receding behind them. They paused in a protected hollow to rest briefly and share what little food remained in their packs. "The mission is perhaps 15 miles ahead," Sam estimated, studying the landscape. "If we maintain this pace, we should reach it by nightfall. And you're certain we'll find sanctuary there?" Deirdre asked. "Father Dominic is a good man," Sam assured her. "He doesn't turn away those in need, regardless of circumstances." They continued their journey as the day warmed around them, the landscape gradually changing from rugged hills to more gentle terrain. By mid-afternoon, they could see in the distance the distinctive outline of Mission Building's white walls and a bell tower rising from a cluster of trees. "Almost there," Sam encouraged as they paused to rest in the shade of a stand of cottonwoods. He was pale with exhaustion, his wound clearly paining him despite his efforts to hide it. You need proper rest and medicine, Deirdre said worriedly, noting how his hand trembled slightly as he drank from their water skin. I've endured worse, he repeated, though with less conviction than before. As they prepared to make the final push to the mission, the sound of approaching horses reached them. Sam tensed, reaching for his rifle but relaxed when he saw the riders' distinctive brown robes. Franciscans, he explained. From the mission. The two monks approached cautiously, concern evident in their expressions as they noted Sam's condition and their overall disheveled state. Peace be with you, travelers, the elder of the two greeted them. You appear in need of assistance. Father Dominic, Sam inquired. I am he, the monk confirmed, though I don't believe we've met. Samuel Ackerman, Sam introduced himself. I helped your mission with supplies during the drought 3 years past. Recognition dawned in the priest's eyes. Ah, yes. The scout who brought medicine when fever struck our community. You are most welcome. His gaze shifted to Deirdre. And your companion, Deirdre Norton, Sam replied. We seek sanctuary for a few days while I recover from an injury. Father Dominic nodded, his shrewd eyes taking in their trail-worn appearance and the wariness in their postures. The mission's doors are open to all in need, he said simply. Come, we will provide food, medicine, and rest. The mission of San Xavier del Bac was an oasis of peace in the harsh landscape, whitewashed walls enclosing a courtyard where fountains played and fruit trees offered shade. Inside, cool stone corridors led to modest but comfortable chambers where travelers could rest in safety. Sam's wound was tended by Brother Thomas, the mission's skilled healer, while Deirdre was given fresh clothing and shown to quarters near the women's section of the compound. Though separated for propriety's sake, they were both treated with kindness and respect, no questions asked about their circumstances beyond what was necessary for medical care. That evening, after a simple but nourishing meal in the mission's refectory, Father Dominic invited them to join him in his study, a book-lined room that smelled pleasantly of leather, parchment, and beeswax candles. Your wound is healing well, he observed to Sam, who was moving more easily after Brother Thomas's ministrations. Though I suspect you pushed yourself further than wisdom would dictate. Necessity often outweighs wisdom, Father, Sam replied with a small smile. The priest nodded thoughtfully, studying them both. And what necessity drives two capable individuals to arrive at my door exhausted, injured, and clearly fleeing something or someone? Deirdre and Sam exchanged glances, silently debating how much to share. Finally, Sam spoke. Bounty hunters, he said simply. From an old misunderstanding. I see, Father Dominic replied, though his expression suggested he understood more than was being said. And your journey's destination, San Bernardino, Deirdre answered. Eventually. The priest's bushy eyebrows rose slightly. A considerable distance yet, and your purpose there, a fresh start, she replied honestly. Away from those who would dictate my choices rather than respect them. Father Dominic nodded, his gaze compassionate. A worthy aspiration, my child. The one that often comes at significant cost. He turned to Sam. And you, Mr. Ackerman, what awaits you in California? Sam's eyes met Deirdre's briefly before he answered. Something I never expected to find, he said quietly. A reason to stop running. The priest observed their exchanged glance with perceptive eyes. I see, he said again, this time with a small smile. Well, you are welcome to remain here until you are fully recovered and rested. The mission is a place of sanctuary for all who come in peace, even if others come looking for us. Sam asked directly. We do not turn away travelers, Father Dominic replied carefully, but neither do we betray those who have sought our protection. The Church has its own authority in these matters. His meaning was clear. They would be safe within the mission's walls. Protected by both tradition and the respect the Franciscans commanded even among those who might not share their faith. The days that followed were a welcome respite from the constant tension and vigilance of their journey. Sam's wound healed rapidly under Brother Thomas's care, while Deirdre found unexpected pleasure in assisting in the mission's garden and infirmary, expanding her knowledge of medicinal plants through the brothers' extensive expertise. In the evenings, they would walk in the mission courtyard, talking of their pasts and imagining possible futures. Sam spoke of his childhood in Kentucky, of his family torn apart by the war, of his years wandering the territories afterward. Deirdre shared memories of her mother gleaned from servants who had known her, of her stifled dreams in Whispering Creek, of her growing interest in medicine and healing. "Brother Thomas says I have natural talent," she told Sam one evening as they sat beneath an orange tree, watching the sunset paint the mission walls in gold and rose. "He's offered to write a letter of introduction to a doctor he knows in San Bernardino who might be willing to take on a female assistant." "Is that what you want?" Sam asked. "To practice medicine?" "I think so," Deirdre replied thoughtfully. "There's something deeply satisfying about healing, about using knowledge to ease suffering." She glanced at him. "What about you? What will you do in California?" Sam considered the question. "I have skills that translate well to settled life tracking, hunting, knowledge of terrain. I could guide expeditions or perhaps work as a surveyor for the growing settlements." His expression grew more serious, "though I find myself considering more permanent arrangements." "Such as?" Deirdre prompted, her heart quickening. "Land," Sam said simply. "A place of my own. Somewhere between wilderness and civilization, where I might build something lasting." He took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against hers. "Something to share." The implication was clear, and Deirdre felt a surge of emotion that was both frightening and exhilarating. "I'd like that," she said softly. On their 5th day at the mission, as they were breaking their fast in the morning sunshine, Brother Miguel approached with news that visitors had arrived, 3 men asking about travelers matching their description. "Father Dominic is speaking with them now," the young monk explained. "He asked that you remain out of sight until they depart." Sam's expression darkened. "The bounty hunters, they're persistent, I'll give them that." From their vantage point in an upper room of the mission, they could see Father Dominic in the courtyard below, speaking with the 3 men who had pursued them so relentlessly. Though they couldn't hear the conversation, the priest's posture was firm, his gestures indicating polite but unmistakable refusal. "He's sending them away," Deirdre observed with relief. "For now," Sam cautioned, "but they may wait beyond mission grounds, hoping to catch us when we leave." "Then what do we do?" Sam's expression was resolute. "We end this. I'm tired of running, tired of looking over my shoulder. These men want me for a bounty placed by people who care nothing for justice, only revenge." "How do we stop them?" Deirdre asked, concern evident in her voice. "I have an idea," Sam replied, "but I'll need Father Dominic's help and yours." That evening, after the bounty hunters had departed, though not, as Sam suspected, gone far, they met with Father Dominic in his study once more. Sam explained his plan, the priest listening with grave attention. "It could work," he acknowledged when Sam had finished, "though it requires significant risk on your part." "All worthwhile endeavors do," Sam replied with a hint of his old wry humor. "And you, my daughter," Father Dominic asked Deirdre, "are you willing to participate in this strategy?" "I am," she answered without hesitation. "I'm tired of being pursued for choices that were mine to make." The priest studied them both, something like approval in his weathered face. "Very well. We will proceed as you suggest." But first, he rose, moving to a small cabinet from which he removed a leather-bound book and a rosary. "There is another matter I feel compelled to address." "Father," Sam inquired, confusion evident in his tone. "It seems clear to me that you two have formed a bond that goes beyond mere traveling companions," Father Dominic observed. "Your feelings for each other are evident in every glance, every gesture." Deirdre felt heat rise to her cheeks, while Sam shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "In these territories, formal marriage is often delayed by circumstance or distance," the priest continued. "But as a man of God, I cannot in good conscience send you forth together without offering the Church's blessing on your union should that be your wish." Stunned silence followed his words. Deirdre looked at Sam, whose expression had transformed from surprise to something more complex, hope mingled with uncertainty. "You're offering to marry us," Sam clarified. "Now, here. If that is your desire," Father Dominic confirmed. "I observe two people who clearly love one another, preparing to face danger together and build a life thereafter. Why wait for the formalities of civilization when God's blessing can be given here as well as anywhere?" Sam turned to Deirdre, taking her hands in his. "This isn't how I planned to ask," he said softly. "I had thought to wait until we were settled, until I could offer you more than a wanderer's uncertain future." "I don't need certainty," Deirdre replied, her heart full. "I need your strength, your integrity, your unwavering support. Everything else we can build together." "Then, Deirdre Norton," Sam said, his voice deepening with emotion, "would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Not because circumstances dictate it or for propriety's sake, but because I love you and cannot imagine my life without you in it." Tears welled in Deirdre's eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "With all my heart, yes." Father Dominic beamed, clearly pleased by their decision. "Excellent. We shall proceed with a simple ceremony tomorrow at dawn before you enact your plan. The brothers will serve as witnesses." And so it was that, as the first light of morning illuminated the mission's small chapel, Deirdre Norton and Samuel Ackerman exchanged vows before God and the assembled Franciscan brothers. She wore a simple white dress borrowed from the mission stores, with wildflowers from the garden woven into her hair. He stood tall and straight in clean clothes, his face solemn yet radiant with a joy she had never seen there before. "With this ring, I thee wed," Sam promised, placing a simple band fashioned by Brother Joseph, the mission's blacksmith, onto her finger. "And pledge my life to yours in sickness and health, in plenty and want, in peace and turmoil, until death parts us." "With this ring, I thee wed," Deirdre echoed, her voice steady as she placed a matching band on his finger. "And pledge my heart to yours, my strength to your struggles, my joy to your sorrows, my life to our shared journey until death parts us. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder," Father Dominic proclaimed, blessing their union with the sign of the cross. "I pronounce you husband and wife." Their first kiss as a married couple was brief, but filled with promise, a pledge of deeper intimacy to come when danger was past and privacy assured. The brothers offered heartfelt congratulations, Brother Thomas presenting Deirdre with a small book of medicinal recipes as a wedding gift, while Brother Joseph gave Sam a finely crafted hunting knife. There was no time for further celebration, however. Their plan required immediate action if it was to succeed. Within the hour, Sam rode out from the mission alone, heading ostensibly for the nearest town. As expected, the bounty hunters who had been watching from a distance immediately began to follow. Deirdre, meanwhile, prepared for her role, donning men's clothing and gathering the supplies they would need. Father Dominic provided her with a swift horse from the mission's stable and a detailed map of the area. God go with you both, he said as she prepared to depart through a lesser-known gate on the mission's western side. May he protect you in this endeavor and bless your life together afterward. Thank you, Father, Deirdre replied, her new wedding ring a comforting weight on her finger. For everything. She rode out according to the plan, following a roundabout trail that would bring her to the rendezvous point before Sam and his pursuers arrived. The place he had chosen was perfect for their purpose, a narrow canyon with high walls and limited approaches, where a single defender could hold off multiple attackers if necessary. Arriving first, Deirdre positioned herself on a ledge overlooking the canyon entrance, rifle at the ready. The hours of waiting were tense, each sound of distant hoofbeats causing her heart to race until they faded again. Finally, near midday, she heard the distinctive rhythm of a single rider approaching at speed. Sam appeared at the mouth of the canyon, pushing his horse hard. He disappeared into the twisting passage below just as 3 riders came into view, in close pursuit. Deirdre took a deep breath, steadying herself as the bounty hunters entered the canyon, following Sam's trail. She waited until they had passed beneath her position, then fired a warning shot that kicked up dust directly in front of the lead rider's horse. The animal reared in panic, nearly unseating its rider. The 3 men pulled up sharply, looking around for the source of the shot. "That's far enough," Deirdre called, her voice carrying clearly in the canyon's acoustics. "The next shot won't miss." The hunters spotted her on the ledge above, rifles immediately swinging in her direction. But before they could fire, Sam's voice rang out from behind them. "I wouldn't," he advised coldly. "She's an excellent shot and you're caught in a crossfire." The men turned to find Sam blocking the way they had come, his rifle trained steadily on them. Their expressions shifted from surprise to anger as they realized they had ridden into a trap. "Drop your weapons," Sam commanded, slowly. "Go to hell, Ackerman," the leader snarled. "That bounty's worth dying for." "Is it?" Sam questioned. "Because that's exactly what you're proposing." A tense standoff ensued, the hunters clearly calculating their odds 3 against 2, but in a disadvantageous position with firearms aimed at them from front and rear. "What's to stop us from shooting you right now?" one demanded. "The fact that my wife will put a bullet in you before you clear leather," Sam replied evenly. "And if by some miracle you manage to kill me, you'll never leave this canyon alive." The use of the word wife caught the hunters by surprise. The leader squinted up at Deirdre, recognition dawning. "That's the woman from Whispering Creek," he said. "The one who ran off with you. Her father's offering a reward too." "My father no longer has any claim on me," Deirdre called down. "I'm a married woman now making my own choices." "Here's the deal," Sam continued, his tone matter of fact. "You turn around, ride out of this territory, and forget you ever heard my name. In return, you get to keep breathing." "And if we don't?" the leader challenged. Sam's expression hardened. "Then this ends badly for everyone. I've got nothing left to lose, gentlemen. Can you say the same?" A long, tense silence followed as the hunters weighed their options. Finally, the leader spoke again, his tone grudging. "The bounty's not worth dying for," he admitted. "But what's to stop us from coming after you again once we're clear?" "This," Sam replied, and tossed a sealed document to the ground between them. "Read it." Warily, one of the hunters dismounted and retrieved the paper, breaking the seal to examine its contents. His expression changed from suspicion to surprise. "It's a pardon," he announced, signed by the territorial governor, "for services rendered to the territory in negotiating peace with the Apache Nation." "Father Dominic has powerful friends," Sam explained, "including Governor Safford, who recognizes that the charges against me were politically motivated and without merit. That pardon nullifies any bounty on my head." The hunters passed the document among themselves, verifying its authenticity. The official seal and signature were unmistakable. "What about the girl's father?" the leader asked, still searching for an angle. "His reward still stands. Mr. Norton has no legal authority over his adult daughter," Sam countered. "And pursuing a legally married woman across territorial lines on her father's behalf would constitute kidnapping a federal offense." The leader spat in disgust, recognizing defeat. "Fine. We'll ride out, but I still say you're a traitor to your kind, Ackerman." "My kind is humanity," Sam replied evenly. "Something you might want to consider embracing yourself someday." Under the unwavering aim of both Sam and Deirdre's rifles, the bounty hunters turned their horses and rode slowly out of the canyon. Only when they were well out of sight did Deirdre scramble down from her position to join her husband. "You think they'll truly give up?" she asked as they embraced briefly. "The pardon is genuine," Sam confirmed. "Father Dominic arranged it through his connections. The governor has been looking to improve relations with the Apache, and my actions at Yellow Creek, properly explained, served that interest." He smiled slightly. "The hunters may be disappointed, but they're practical men. They won't waste time on a bounty that no longer exists when there are paying targets elsewhere." "And my father," Deirdre pressed. "May continue to nurse his grudge," Sam acknowledged, "but without legal standing or hired guns, there's little he can do. Especially once we're established in California." Relief washed through Deirdre, followed by a dawning realization. For the first time since fleeing Whispering Creek, they were truly free to determine their own course. "So what now, husband?" she asked, the word still new and wonderful on her tongue. Sam's arms tightened around her. "Now, wife, we return to the mission to thank Father Dominic properly, gather our supplies, and begin our journey to San Bernardino as Mr. and Mrs. Ackerman." They spent one final night at the mission, receiving the Franciscans' blessings and heartfelt farewells. Father Dominic provided them with letters of introduction to contacts in California, as well as sufficient supplies for their journey. "Your rooms are adjacent tonight," the priest informed them with a twinkle in his eye. "An accommodation to your new status as a married couple, though still maintaining propriety under our roof." That night, as they finally shared the intimacy of marriage in the privacy of their connected chambers, Deirdre discovered new depths to the man she had pledged herself to: tenderness beneath his strength, vulnerability behind his resolve, and a passion that matched her own newly awakened desires. Afterward, lying in the circle of Sam's arms with her head resting on his chest, she felt a contentment she had never known before. "I never imagined this," she admitted softly. "When I fled Whispering Creek, I thought only of escape, of freedom from constraints. I never dreamed I might find love along the way." Sam's fingers traced gentle patterns along her bare shoulder. "The best journeys often lead to destinations we never anticipated," he observed. "I set out years ago seeking solitude, convinced that connection brought only pain. You taught me otherwise." "As did you," Deirdre replied, lifting her head to meet his gaze in the moonlight filtering through the narrow window. "You showed me that standing firm in one's convictions doesn't have to mean standing alone." Their journey to San Bernardino took 3 weeks, across diverse landscapes, and through small settlements where their status as newlyweds earned them smiles and occasional small kindnesses. They traveled without haste, enjoying each other's company and the freedom to determine their own pace. San Bernardino itself was a revelation, a growing town nestled in a fertile valley, with mountains rising dramatically to the north and east. Originally established as a Mormon colony, it had since diversified, attracting settlers from across the country and beyond. The newly constructed railroad connected it to Los Angeles and the coast, while wagon roads linked it to the interior territories they had traversed. With Father Dominic's letters of introduction, they quickly found their footing. Dr. Harrison, the physician to whom Deirdre had been recommended, proved to be an elderly but progressive-minded man who readily accepted her as an assistant after observing her knowledge and skill. "Medicine needs more women practitioners," he declared after testing her expertise. "Particularly on the frontier, where female patients often suffer rather than discuss certain ailments with male physicians. I've been seeking an apprentice with both intelligence and compassion. You appear to possess both." Sam, meanwhile, found work with the county surveyor, his knowledge of terrain and tracking skills proving valuable as the region underwent rapid development. Within months, they had saved enough to purchase a small property on the outskirts of town, 5 acres with a modest house, a barn, and sufficient land for a garden and orchard. "Room to grow," Sam observed as they stood together on their land for the first time, watching the sunset paint the mountains in gold and purple. "In every sense of the word." Deirdre leaned against him, his arm solid around her waist. "It's perfect," she agreed. "Close enough to town for my work with Dr. Harrison, wild enough to satisfy your need for open spaces. And private enough for a family," Sam added softly, his hand moving to rest gently over her abdomen, where, they had recently confirmed, new life was beginning to grow. The news of Deirdre's pregnancy had filled them both with joy and trepidation, the natural concerns of new parents heightened by her medical knowledge and his experience of loss. But as Dr. Harrison assured them, Deirdre was healthy and strong, her body well suited to childbearing despite the fears her father had instilled regarding her mother's fate. As they settled into their new home and prepared for the child to come, Deirdre often thought of the journey that had brought them to this place, the desperate flight from Whispering Creek, the unexpected alliance with Sam, the gradual blossoming of love amid danger and uncertainty. One evening, as they sat together on the porch of their home, watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk, a rider approached along the road from town. Sam tensed slightly, old instincts never entirely abandoned, but relaxed as the visitor came into clearer view. "It's just Thomas from the post office," he observed, rising to greet the young man who occasionally delivered mail to outlying properties. "Mr. Ackerman," Thomas called, dismounting. "Mrs. Ackerman, got something special for you today, came all the way from Arizona Territory." He handed Sam a small package wrapped in brown paper and secured with twine, then tipped his hat to Deirdre before remounting and continuing on his rounds. Sam brought the package to the porch, examining the unfamiliar handwriting on the address. "It's for you," he said, passing it to Deirdre. Curious, she untied the twine and carefully unwrapped the paper. Inside was a small leather pouch decorated with intricate beadwork, and within that, a carved wooden amulet on a leather cord. "Apache work," Sam observed, recognizing the craftsmanship. "Beautiful." A small folded paper accompanied the gift. Deirdre opened it, her eyes widening as she read the brief message written in a careful hand. "For the healer with kind hands and a brave heart. May it protect the new life you carry." The river finds its path to the sea, as all journeys find their true direction. Little hawk tears welled in Deirdre's eyes as she passed the note to Sam, who read it with a thoughtful expression. How did he know? She wondered, her hand instinctively moving to her growing belly, visible now beneath her loose dress. "About the baby," Sam smiled slightly. "News travels in ways we don't always understand. The Apache have connections throughout the territories." He studied the amulet. This is a powerful gesture, a blessing from a medicine man for your child. Are you troubled by it? Deirdre asked, watching his face carefully. She had told Sam everything about her friendship with Little Hawk, but this reminder of a man who had once meant much to her might still stir complicated feelings. To her relief, Sam shook his head. "No," he said honestly. "How could I resent a blessing for our child? Besides," he added, taking her hand, "if not for Little Hawk teaching you to trust beyond the boundaries others set, you might never have trusted me at that crossroads." Deirdre leaned against him, grateful for his understanding. "Every step of the path led here," she mused, "even the painful ones." "Especially those," Sam agreed, his arm encircling her shoulders as they watched night descend over their land, their home, their future. 3 months later, on a clear autumn morning, Deirdre gave birth to a healthy son they named David Thomas Ackerman, David for Deirdre's beloved childhood nurse, who had shown her motherly love when her own mother was gone. Thomas for the brother at the mission who had helped heal Sam's wounds and blessed their union. As she held her son for the first time, Sam beside her with wonder and love illuminating his face, Deirdre felt the journey come full circle. She had fled Whispering Creek seeking freedom from others' judgment, only to find that true freedom came not from escape, but from finding where one truly belonged. In the years that followed, their family grew. A daughter joined their son 2 years later, and eventually a second son completed their family. Their home expanded as well, with additions to accommodate their growing household and Deirdre's increasing medical practice. After Dr. Harrison's retirement, she became the primary healer for many families in the region, her knowledge blending formal medical training with the wisdom Little Hawk had shared, and her own careful observations. Sam found his place too, eventually becoming county surveyor and later serving on the town council. His measured judgment and first-hand knowledge of diverse cultures proving valuable as San Bernardino continued to grow and change. Though he never lost his love of open spaces and occasionally disappeared into the mountains for days at a time, he always returned, drawn back by the family that had become his center. Occasionally, news reached them from Whispering Creek. Deirdre's father had finally passed away, bitter and alone. The town itself had declined as the railroad bypassed it for more promising locations. Little Hawk's people had been relocated to a reservation, though he himself had apparently chosen a different path, traveling throughout the territories as a healer to both his people and others who sought his skills. No regrets. Sam asked Deirdre on their 10th wedding anniversary as they stood together on the porch of their home, watching their children playing in the yard below. David serious and thoughtful like his father, Emma spirited and curious, young Joseph toddling after his siblings with determined steps. Deirdre considered the question, thinking of all they had built together, not just a home and family, but a life of purpose and meaning, of respect within their community, of love that had only deepened with time and shared experiences. "Not one," she answered truthfully, leaning into the solid warmth of her husband's embrace. "The town shunned me for loving wrong, but you were right that day at the crossroads." "About what?" Sam asked, his arm tightening around her waist. Deirdre smiled, turning to face the man who had changed her life with his courage, integrity, and unwavering support. "About love finally getting it right."